Welcome back to yet another episode of All About Your Benjamins, the podcast, the More Than Money series. And today you get to hear a conversation with my friend, Andy Martz. Andrew Martz is what you're going to see in here, but I call him Andy. His chapter is called What the Hat Lady of Hollywood Taught Us. Great conversation, great chapter. You can find it on page 105 if you're following along at home. Let me give you Andy's background real quick, and then we'll head on over to the conversation. He is a husband, father, and financial planner. He is the founder and president of WIS Advisors, or WIS. This is horrible, but I'm not sure which way I want to say it. A comprehensive planning firm serving the sports and entertainment industries with offices in Los Angeles, Dallas, and Denver. He's also the co-host of Dollars and Sensibilities, a weekly podcast that discusses the numbers, concepts, and behaviors that shape financial decision-making. Andrew is a member of the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of Financial Planning Association. He is a certified financial planner professional and holds an MBA in financial planning. Now that you know Andy, let's get to this conversation. Enjoy this. If you've not bought the book, please go grab yourself a copy and enjoy this episode. And we'll see you all in the next one. Andrew, I know that they call you Money Martz, which I love that is your nickname. How many years have you been a financial advisor?
Yeah, this is year 17 for me. So okay. 2006, we got started.
All right. So over those years, number of clients, number of situations, a bunch of stories you could have chosen to contribute to More Than Money. Show the plug. What was it about this particular story that made you choose it over all the ones you could have picked?
I don't know if it was the story as much as it was the people. And so, as an advisor over the years, I've worked with a number of people where they try to help you design your business. And they always say, well, who's your ideal client? And the family that I wrote about has always been the number one ideal client for the very simple fact that I admire them so much. So my story spans 3 generations. And, today, what we would call G2, so the second generation is really our primary client. It started with G1, but I've always admired this family from afar, getting to watch you learn so much about people when you're their financial advisor, what they do for a living, how they spend their money, how they make their money, and everything in between. And I've always admired their character, the people that they are. And throughout my career, I've always thought, I don't want to just work with, CEOs of Fortune 50 companies and the wealthiest people. I want to work with people who I like and who believe in what I believe in. So to me, this family, and in the book, we call them the Bowers. It's not their real name, but that's their fictitious name in the book. Through generations, emulate characteristics that I would want to see through generations of my own family. And my hope was that telling their story would inspire others to think about not just their own retirement in 20 or 30 years, but the impact that you can have over 100 years or over 200 years through multiple generations of your family, not by how much money you make and how much money you save, or even did you pick the right investment, but what were the things that I taught my children and I taught the next generation about how to live and how to behave and how to make decisions, and one of those big decisions and behavioral traits is how do you deal with money?
Mm-hmm. When I first started my firm, I didn't have a niche, not a traditional niche, but my niche that I said was I wanted to work with people that I like. Mm-hmm. That really resonates that you are more interested in finding like-minded people. And I think that sets up for a great advisor-client relationship because you have chances are you can have similar values, maybe even similar interests, so that you're going to be able to relate and appreciate what it is they want to do with their money and move beyond the numbers, more than money, and understand their values and who they are, what's most important. And again, to your point, ultimately help them live with their money, not just have it, and show their kids and grandkids how to handle money and how money is really a tool to help you create a life that you want and help people and do these things. So I think that resonates with me because I would say that I'm kind of on the same plane as you are. Is there a specific message from this story that really stands out to you or you would want to make sure people don't miss?
Yeah, I think that for me, I'm a father of two young children, and the message is like, what can you teach the next generation? And what are the things that are most important to set them up for success? So one of the messages is, being independently minded. So every generation, despite what inheritance might have been coming or might be projected to be coming, was always very independently minded. And still today, on the third generation, I'm blessed enough to be working with G3, are very, very independently minded. They don't think about family money or trusts or any, businesses or things of that nature. They simply think about, how are we living our lives? The other thing, and this is like a very classic financial planning strategy, is you think about when you're in your early years of independence, right? Post-college, first career. It's like, what are the biggest headwinds that you have to saving money and building longer-term wealth? Well, it's usually paying for education, which is a massive problem today, right? Student loan debt. And we all know kind of the story about rising student loan debt today. The second is paying for a wedding, which the cost of weddings are very, very expensive and many parents help with, but sometimes, the participants, the bride and the groom, and they're left with a cost there. And then buying that first home, right? And saving for the down payment of that first home, which takes an exorbitant amount of capital, particularly given, right, we're recording this in 2023 when housing market is up. So the one thing that each generation in this family did for the next was help with those three items: education, marriage, and housing on the very first step. And that was enabled them to at least set up. Now, I know not every family and every generation has that ability, but that would be, what certainly puts you onto a playing field that gives you that extra head start to, start thinking very independently.
It'll be interesting to see as like generations go on, if there's a shift in what the family or other families outside of your clients begin to help their future generations prepare for. We were talking beforehand about, people making decisions about the life they really want and the influences that we have through society and our families, and the American dreams of, like, you're supposed to do these things and go to college and get married and have a house. But we're seeing that other people are delaying that, or maybe they don't want to do that because they have other ambitions that they want. And the American dream's not going away, but I think it's going to shift. So it'd be interesting to see if they decide, okay, we're not going to necessarily set up as much money for education because X, Y, and Z values have changed, or schooling has changed, but now it's going to be this. Maybe it becomes, we'll help prepare for some type of secondary education, and maybe instead of it being for a wedding, it is for the ability to start a business or something. And I guess like today they could, depending on how the planning is done, these accounts could be earmarked for a wedding, but you could just change the purpose for another depending on how they're set up. But it'd be interesting, less about the structure and more about what the values are that they want to set up for the future generations, if they'll always be the same or if they'll change.
I think it'll absolutely change, right? And you already see that, in our generation and the generation just behind us, where there was, I don't know about you, but we're about the same age. Coming out of high school was like unequivocal, you have to get a college education. There was no other option. Like, that is what you had to do. And that story has, been perpetuated for decades in this country. So now people, for the first time in a long time, are really resisting that, probably in this past decade, but certainly in the last number of years. And alternative options for education are popping up all over the place through technology that are driving down the cost, where you can get certified to be a computer programmer, or certified to be, a financial services representative, and not have to go this traditional route of six-figure education. But I think the theme is, in those early years, establish yourself to be independent, have good work ethic, learning the power of earning a dollar and, earning your own keep, and then immediately thinking about investing for the future. So
let's give listeners or viewers, if they're watching this on YouTube, an exercise or something, and we can put our heads together, because you didn't know I was going to ask you this, and I didn't know I was going to ask it. But what's a takeaway they could take from this conversation that could help them prepare the next generation for responsibly handling money going forward, and something that doesn't require you to have a lot of net worth? So meaning maybe it's not setting up these accounts to help out with college, wedding, and house, but what is an exercise that anybody with any amount of money could do to help set the next generation up for a good start, independent thinking, and a good relationship with money?
So I think one of the key things that become an obstacle for people is their perspective of time. And I notice, particularly with a lot of young investors or relatively newer investors, so I'll just classify that as people who are under the age of 55. That can be relatively newer investors because they haven't experienced maybe all the ups and downs that you would if you've been investing for 40 years. And with that distorted perspective of time, investors seem to be short-sighted. What did I make this year? How are my accounts doing this quarter? Or even I've got to make it to retirement. So I'm 40 now. I've got 25 more years. And I think in a practical exercise is think about, if you want to think generationally, you have to think about much longer time frames. Mm-hmm. So you don't have 25 years. You're not investing and preparing for the next, you're investing for the next 100 years, for the next 150 years. So one of the things that I do, and I think I saw this on Instagram somewhere, like people were like, they were targeting me with an ad, but it's this poster that has your life basically in a color-coded chart. So I did this on Excel. I started with box 1 and I made 52 weeks for, a year. And then I did columns. I just did 150 columns. And what I do is I shaded out the part of my life that I've already lived. And every week I just shade another box, and then I shade another box. And I've done it based on my birthday, which is in September. And this helps me. And I've even kind of color coded different milestones. So I kind of did 0 to 20, because that was just me growing up and graduating college. I started my first career when I was, in financial services around 20, 21. So then that was another color coding. Then I got married at 30. So then I shaded that a different color. So now I'm in this kind of, marriage and family, chapter of my life. And, I'll probably change another color when my kids go to college or something like that, and we become empty nesters. But what happens is I realize two things. One, how much time I have. There is so much of this chart that is unshaded. It's just white space. So I've got so much time to look forward to. But it's also a reminder of how quickly it can go. Because I can look back and be like, wow, I started my firm 5 years ago, and that was a blink of an eye. That happened really, really, really quickly. So it's this tension of I'm trying to keep progressing, to keep taking one step forward. I want to get 1% better every single day. That idea, but I'm not planning for tomorrow. I don't need results instantly because I'm planning for the next 100 years here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I like that. One of the shifts I've done recently is thinking of time. This is more not long-term time, but thinking time like day to day in the form of energy. So for me, we've all wasted a lot of time. But when I think about it as the form of energy, I'm much more protective of my energy. And the realization I've come to is that I don't feel time pass through the day. And just your point, time flies. But I feel my energy. By the end of the day, I'm tired. So as I think about, and time is energy and vice versa. So as I think about, all right, this next thing, do I want to allocate energy towards that? Or do I want to allocate towards something else that's more productive towards the things that matter the most to me, so that when I'm tired at the end of the night, I look back and all right, I did everything I needed to do. I've earned this tired. I did it the right way versus, man, I wasted a lot of energy today and now I don't have as much and I didn't really accomplish anything. So that doesn't really tie into financial planning per se, but I do think that perspective can really help out when it comes to building your financial plan and figuring out what makes the most sense and what you value the most, and then that determines how you allocate your dollars. So it does come back to it, just in a different way, which I think is a good segue into, obviously, from the conversation we've just had and what the chapter you wrote about, which your chapter starts on page 105. The relationship, the things you're talking about, how you work with your clients is not that of the stereotypical financial advisor. And one of the things I'm loving with this podcast series is that we are all having a chance to bust some stereotypes of financial advisors. So you've got an opportunity to let the world know, you think a financial advisor does this or is this way, but the reality of it is that's not how we are. What's the one stereotype that you want to bust today?
About financial advisors?
Yeah, about financial advisors, yeah.
That financial advisors are trying to sell you something. Mm-hmm. It's like, that is, sometimes you can sense the hesitation of people when they find out what you do, because it's like a lot of experiences they have is like, this person's going to try to sell me an insurance policy. This person's going to try to sell me some, retirement account or some fund or something. And I just believe so much more in relationship. We want to base our relationships, and so many people, you and so many of our friends who are in the industry believe in this relationship with financial advisor or with their clients. And I think the world is waking up to this too, by the way. And I don't know if it's just some, shift in culture and demographics and generations. But financial advisors in 50 years are going to help clients more with organizing life and a lot of the things you and I were talking about, mm-hmm. before we came online today, helping with their life, helping with their relationships, helping find purpose and meaning, but doing that through the lens of money. And, money is this common denominator, at least in this world, of anything, right? If you want to be healthier, like you need a gym membership, you got to spend money, right? You want to, you want to have a better relationship with your spouse, but you're going to have to dedicate Friday nights to, go and do something fun and special and maybe get a babysitter for the kids. Like, you just take resources. So I think the biggest myth is that, financial services and financial planners and financial advisors are not trying to sell you something. And I would say that the vast majority of, and maybe my opinion is biased, but the vast majority of financial professionals that I meet care more about the people than they do about the money. And they're trying to find ways to help people. Now, everybody has to make a living, and that's understood in the world of business. But that would be the biggest myth, I think, is that financial advisors don't want to sell you something. They want to understand and they want to try to help you. And
most financial advisors will admit that relationship or that stereotype has been earned by our profession. And
that's right.
A book like this, the community, the AGC, advisors like you, we're working hard to break that down. But our profession has earned it, so it's up to us to tell that story and then deliver on that story as well, so that when they begin working with an advisor like you or one of the others that are in the book, they see that, okay, they're not just talking, this is really what they're about. And I think it's cool because the stories are real stories. They're not made up. These aren't hypothetical case studies. These are real life stories that have happened that show that financial planning is more than money. I'll keep on teasing that title in there. All right, so one of the things that's been cool is I want to have some transparency and share some of our personal side. So obviously, as financial advisors, we have a good understanding of money. Doesn't necessarily mean we always do perfect things with it. We're humans. But I like for people to hear what advisors view as their best decisions with money. So if you had to pick one of your best decisions with money, what's one of your best financial decisions?
One of my best financial decisions, I'm trying to not think of all the super, financial planner stereotypical stuff. Mm-hmm. Like saving your tax deferred accounts and contribute regularly.
Yeah, no, I don't want that crap. Because at the end of the day, those are never the best financial decisions. I mean, those are important financial decisions, but those are never when on your deathbed, no one's ever going to look back and say, "I'm glad I maxed out my Roth IRA." There's going to be something else that's, to your point, not traditional financial planning, which is what I hope all of our answers become. So yeah,
I'll give you a personal and a long-winded answer. I'll try to make this very, very short.
Okay.
So, I grew up in a kind of typical middle, lower class family. And one of the things I heard growing up when it related to money a lot of the times was no. Hey, oh man, I'd love this new pair of sneakers. My friends have these. No, no. Hey, let's go, on this trip. No. Hey, I want to join ski club. No. So that there was this like fear of money that we had to hold on to it. And I carried that into, my adult life, where I was fearful of spending money because I was so tightly gripped to it. Early in my career, because I didn't make much of it. But as I started to, advance my career and I had a little bit of savings and a little bit of discretionary income, I erred on the side of not participating in experiences. And that all changed when I met my wife. And the greatest financial decision I probably ever made was the decision to marry her, because she has completely changed the way I think about money and what money is. Because both from my experiences and then some of my like more academic training as a financial professional, it was like money optimization all of the time. And, my wife is not technically trained in financial planning and financial services, but is very, very savvy, but also just values people more than anything. And the people that are most important in my life are her and our children. And being able to experience and do things. So, taking trips that like sometimes like, wow, like this is a lot of money for this vacation. But in hindsight, a trip we took 2 years ago, I don't think about the price tag. I only think about the pictures, the Polaroids, the memories, the experiences, the laughter, the videos that are on my phone when I'm watching them when the kids are in bed late at night. And like, wow, like that was an incredible trip. So long-winded answer to say the greatest financial decision I've ever made was marrying my wife.
That's a good one. And a different angle. Someone else had that, but it was a different angle. So I like that. And I think one of the things that sometimes people, when they hear stories about, spending money on experiences and, it could be an expensive trip, like not every experience that creates a lot of memories has to be a lot of money.
That's right.
It could just be, if you're working a lot, taking time out to go take your kids to the park. And, they're going to value that because they know you work hard and you don't have a lot of time. Doesn't cost much to go do it, but like your presence is priceless to them.
That's right.
And that doesn't cost you anything. So that's one of the things that, being someone who creates content in the realm of money, I always want to try to be sympathetic that not everybody finds themselves in the position that I'm in. And by no means am I the multimillionaire, but we're in good shape. So I want to always try to find an opportunity to say, yes, I'm very fortunate to be able to take trips that we take and do the things we do, but you can still, and we still, have very good memories that have been created, sometimes better ones when we spent the least amount of money, going for hikes and playing in the snow. Like experiences don't always have to have a price tag to them. And I just think that's important for people not to get lost, because if they think they have to have a lot of money to create these experiences that will last a lifetime, then they might miss it because they're focusing on the wrong thing. The greatest experience is really just your time and your presence.
That's right. Because what she has done for me has nothing to do with money, like practically the amount of it. It's simply the lens that I view it through. And even to your point, right? Like how I'm allocating my time. There was this period of time where it's like, oh, I have to work X amount of hours a week because, you get caught up in that like hustle culture and, grind culture of like, you just always got to be, if you're not, working, grinding, if it's not dark outside by the time you leave your office, like you didn't really earn it, right? It's like, well, no, that's not true at all. And again, it's shifting those priorities and recognizing like what matters the most. What am I trying to do with my life?
Mm-hmm. All right, so we got your best financial decision. This is the one you didn't know was coming, and no one knew it was coming before we talked. What is the least optimal decision you've done financially? or another way to frame it would be, what's a decision with money you made that taught you the greatest lesson because it didn't work out the way you wanted it to?
So it's probably there's probably like 2 or 3 decisions, all kind of, with the same theme. Like I was an irresponsible 20-something-year-old. I had a credit card, like a student credit card that I got in college, really, really young.
Did get a T-shirt? Like, hey, you get a free T-shirt, get a credit card?
Yeah, like, you're at the baseball stadium or something, and like somebody's like, you get a free beer and a hat and get a credit card. And you're like, yeah, great. Thanks, Bank of America. But so had a credit card, wasn't responsible with it. And I kind of grew up in financial services early in my career through the Great Depression or Great Recession in 2008. So like I started my career and things were okay. And then 2008 came and it was like, oh gosh, this is not okay. And did not have a lot of income in 2008, 2009. So I allowed credit card balances to get high. I also got a speeding ticket in that period of time that I could not afford. And so the worst financial decision I ever made was ignoring financial decisions. And the one thing I learned is that this applies to all areas of life, not just my money, but particularly money, is that problems do not age well. So now when I have a financial problem, I handle it. Even if it's something, it's like, oh gosh, like I didn't have the money at the time to pay off the credit card, but I could have called the credit card company and made a plan to pay that off. I didn't have the money to pay that speeding ticket at the time, but I could have called and I could have showed up to the courthouse and I could have made a plan to, instead of ignoring it for 2 years and then getting thousands of dollars of fees and fines and a bad credit report and everything else. So I'm very grateful that I learned that lesson when I was young and, made a commitment to not allow problems to age, which is now true in all areas of my life. Like, if there's a problem, let's address it. Let's handle it.
Well, I think another good lesson from that, and thank you for sharing, because it's hard sometimes as a money professional to say, hey, I messed up with money, but it all happens, and it happens all throughout our life. But I think that the other thing that it sounds like is you didn't allow those money decisions and the irresponsible decisions to define you with money. Like, I think a lot of people continue to shame themselves for the things they did in the past rather than, hey, I messed up in the past, I addressed it, I fixed it, and like now I'm smarter for it. Some people do that, but a lot of people hang on to it, and it creates this additional stress with money because they are holding on to what's happened in the past. So, being able to hold yourself accountable and work through it is huge.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we are coming towards the end, and I know that this episode was a time commitment from you. You've got a wife, you've got the kids, you've got the business. Writing your chapter for the book was no short investment of time. You had to write your chapter, you had to edit it, you had to peer edit it. So I want to thank you for dedicating the time to bring your story to More Than Money, because as I've told everybody, this book would not be complete without all the chapters in it. It would have been a good book, but without your chapter, it would have been lacking. But we've got everything covered. So I want to thank you for your time. But I also want to ask you, what was it about this project that made you want to commit that time? Because we didn't know Harriman House was going to pick it up when we all committed. We were going to just self-publish it. And it got life and took off on its own, but you joined it before there was this exciting book with a publisher. Why'd you want to do it?
Well, let's give honor where honor is due. So first, thank you for not just curating and really spearheading this type of project, but even before that, birthed out of an idea that you had, creating the AGC, a community of advisors. So being a part of the project was easy because it is so exciting to work with financial planners who believe in the same thing that I believe about this profession, which is that it's not about your money. And for years, I would say that, right? The tagline of our firm, which selfishly, when we were voting on titles for the book, I wanted to be Go Beyond Wealth, because our firm's tagline is WS Advisors Go Beyond Wealth. It's a shameless plug for the firm. But I would always say that I wanted to be known as the financial advisor who tells you it's not about the money. And I would enjoy almost kind of the dichotomy when you like talk to people who's like, well, tell me about your investments. And it's like, well, I won't tell you about investments because it's not about the money. And I like that sort of tension you would feel in that early dance with like prospective clients and people who would learn what you would do. And I thought that I was like all by myself. Like I thought that I was the weird guy who would be saying that at the regional meetings, and everybody's like, who's this guy? Like, dude, it's all about the money. It's all about the next AUM. It's all about the new accounts and the net cash flow, because that's all people measured. So when I found, following you and Taylor and finding this community, learning about the project, it was like an easy, like, oh my gosh, these people are like me. These men and women understand what I've been trying to say for years and years. Like I'm not alone. So it was an easy yes.
Well, thank you for not giving up as you felt alone. That's one of the reasons I think we started the community, was just that we realized it can be lonely, and there are other people who shared the same thoughts as Taylor and I did, and let's get together because we're all better together. But it could have been very easy to say, you know what, everybody's telling me I'm crazy, let me just fall back in line and make a good living and help people along the way. But you broke the mold and you're helping people in a much greater way. So from one advisor to another, thank you for doing that, because you alone are helping making our profession better, building more trust with people and helping people, whether they're your clients or not. And the book, again, tells all these stories, which is what we wanted. We want people to see that financial planning and financial services and your finances, while money is an important component of it, it's much bigger than money. And
that's right.
I think sometimes when people, especially when they're struggling with money or they don't have a good relationship with it, they think that sounds fake. But I can promise you, through experience with clients over 18 years and talking to other advisors, that there is a moment when you realize that money, it is bigger than the dollars. It is more than money. And our hope with the book and the way you talk to people is to help people realize that sooner, because I think it's one of those things where you can read about it and these stories might motivate you and might give you some hope, but until you experience it yourself and the light bulb goes off, there's always that little bit of doubt. But once you realize that, as your wife did for you, it changes the perspective that you have on money, which changes the way you live your life, and I think brings a lot of happiness and fulfillment to it. So that's very, very long-winded. Thank you for participating in the project and in this episode. So anybody that wants to learn more about you, follow you on social media because they like your vibe and like what you're about, where can they find you? I'll have show notes for all the episodes.
Yeah, probably Instagram is the best. Andy Martz is the handle there. Money Martz on TikTok.
Right.
And
you're on TikTok.
That's right. Yeah. And
trying to drown out the bad TikTok advice out there.
We're trying. We're doing our best. We'll see clips from this episode up there, I'm sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I will make sure to link to all of those. And man, I want to appreciate you again, or I want to let you know I appreciate you for participating in it, coming on the podcast as well. Everybody, I appreciate you tuning in, watching. If you have not bought the book yet, go get a copy. It's never too late. And remember, all of the proceeds on the AGC side, Harriman's House got to do their thing, but AGC, we're donating all the proceeds to organizations within the profession. So trying to do our part to put money in the organizations that are moving our profession forward, like the VLX internship and the Foundation for Financial Planning. So Andy gets nothing out of this other than he gets to tell a story to hopefully help you get a better relationship with money, and we're putting some money into the pockets of organizations. So go grab a copy or two, and remember that everything when it comes to finances is more than money, hence the name of the book, and we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks, Justin.